global crossover. The Caitlin Clark NBA crossover. Caitlin Clark's
A minor crossover? No. The Caitlin Clark NBA takeover. Pure Caitlin Clark. Drop whatever you are holding right this second, because the story I am about to drop is going to completely rewire your brain regarding the sheer influence one single athlete wields over the entire sports machine. Here is the kicker. Caitlin Clark was nowhere near the hardwood. She was not suiting up. She was not dropping 30 pieces. She was not snatching ankles or splashing buckets from the logo. She was just posted up behind a desk with a mic in her hand. Yet, miraculously, she smashed a record that has gathered dust since 2002. Let that reality marinate. 22 years. That is the drought the NBA has endured for Sunday night viewership like this. And the catalyst? Just one baller who is not even on the roster, flipping the script entirely. The suits at NBC? They are absolutely losing their composure right about now. Lines are jamming, calendars are filling up, and every major network across the states is shouting the exact same query. How do we lock down Caitlin Clark? But hold on. This is where the plot thickens. Because the headline everyone is retweeting, that is just the tip of the iceberg. The real drama backstage, the secrets the analytics spill, and the seismic shift coming for hoops broadcasting. Radio silence on that front until this very moment. Before I unveil the nitty-gritty of this showdown, I need a favor from you. Hit the comments section immediately. Did you glue yourself to the screen specifically for Caitlin? Or is this news breaking fresh for you right now? Trust me, your answer carries way more weight than you realize. Picture the scene. Sunday night on NBC. The purple and gold facing the Knicks at the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. Already a blockbuster clash. Guaranteed eyeballs, sure. But then NBC rolled the dice on a strategic maneuver. They planted Caitlin Clark right there on the analyst panel with Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, and Reggie Miller. The payoff? 4.5 million viewers, peaking at 5 million strong, the highest-rated regular season Sunday NBA showdown in more than 2 decades. And just like that, every single player in the RAND sports media landscape is scrambling to decode this anomaly. But here is the brutal truth no one dares to whisper. This was not a fluke. It was not serendipity. This was undeniable evidence of a reality the basketball establishment has tried to sweep under the rug. Caitlin Clark has transcended being just a hooper. She is a cultural force. And Sunday night? That was merely the opening act of a massive revolution. The real question is, can the NBA actually handle the storm that is brewing? Allow me to sketch out the chaos inside NBC headquarters when those ratings reports landed. Top brass. Gawking at monitors, jaws on the floor, phones blowing up, because absolutely no one saw this coming. Granted, they knew Caitlin was big time. They knew she brought a crowd. They knew her name carried serious clout in the women's game. But this? This was off the charts. 4.5 million souls did not tune in to witness LeBron James. They did not show up for Jalen Brunson. They did not switch on the TV for the legendary aura of Madison Square Garden. They showed up for a 23-year-old icon who was not even the main event. Now, this is where the narrative goes completely off the rails. NBC boss Rick Cordella, the guy calling the shots, could not stop gushing about her. He labeled her debut top tier, said she navigated the spotlight like a seasoned pro. He couldn't stop raving about her genius-level court vision and her knack for breaking down complicated plays into plain English. But hey, let's peel back the curtain and look at the real subtext here. Decoding the corporate speak, the executives at NBC are basically screaming one thing: we just hit the absolute jackpot. Consider the context. The league has been floundering, with viewership numbers bouncing all over the place. The Gen Z crowd just isn't tuning in the way previous generations did. For years, the brass has been hunting high and low for a catalyst, a miracle cure to resurrect those massive ratings figures from the 90s. Then, out of nowhere, a WNBA icon strolls onto the set and fixes the entire mess overnight. Yet, the applause isn't unanimous. Far from it. Away from the cameras, the atmosphere is thick with resentment and envy. Industry lifers are fuming because Caitlin Clark completely bypassed the traditional hierarchy. She didn't stand in line like everyone else. She skipped the years of slogging through sideline gigs just to earn a seat at the main table. She simply arrived and owned the room immediately, leaving old-school broadcasters absolutely livid. Pundits who have put in 20 or 30 years are asking why she gets the prime gigs they are still chasing. And let me tell you, the backstage murmurs are turning into a roar. They claim she is nothing but a hype train, predicting the shine will fade once the newness is gone. Dismissing it as a PR stunt is easy, but these detractors are missing the bigger picture. Data doesn't have an agenda, and the viewers have made their choice loud and clear. That broadcast on Sunday sent an undeniable message. The people are demanding more Caitlyn. Like I mentioned earlier, this rabbit hole goes way further down than the headlines suggest. I wasn't kidding. The post-show fallout and NBC's upcoming strategy are where the real drama lies. You better believe the slate of events they have lined up is going to blow your mind. Before I drop that bombshell, though, ponder this. What is the source of her incredible influence? How does she drive engagement on a level that veterans with double her experience can only dream of? It's not magic. There is legitimate psychology and science explaining her gravitational force. Grasp that concept, and her meteoric ascent suddenly looks inevitable. The key has been right in front of our faces all along. Surprisingly, it's not about the sport at all. It's the riddle that haunts every network boss after dark. What is the secret ingredient that creates true charisma? Beyond fame or skill, what makes a person impossible to ignore? The type of presence that silences a crowded room the moment they enter. The sort of player whose mere existence on the floor sends viewership sky high. The analyst who takes a seat and instantly smashes viewership records standing for 20 years. Researchers have analyzed this phenomenon, and shrinking heads have spent years trying to crack the code. Ultimately, it boils down to a holy trinity of traits: being real, being relatable, and being wild. Caitlyn Clark possesses this trifecta in abundance. Let's dissect it. Number 1 is authenticity. We live in a world where players are coached into boredom, where every Q&A feels like a sterile press statement, where every tweet is vetted by PR armies, yet she speaks her mind without a filter. She roars after a big play. She chirps at opponents. She wears her heart on her sleeve and refuses to say sorry for her killer instinct. Fans are absolutely famished for that kind of rawness. They are sick of the programmed responses. They are done with the sanitized corporate jargon. They crave a human connection, someone who reignites that original passion for the game. Point number 2 is the human element. Even though she is a global superstar, she still feels like a friend you grew up with. She isn't a product of the Hollywood Hills, Manhattan penthouses, or South Beach neon. She is pure, unfiltered Iowa. Her collegiate career didn't happen at some powerhouse dynasty, expected to crush every opponent simply by showing up. Nobody handed her a crown at birth or labeled her a prodigy. She had to claw her way up from the bottom. She fought for every inch, and that struggle makes parents look at her and see the reflection of their own children. It is living evidence that greatness isn't reserved for the silver spoon elite. That kind of bond, it is impossible to fabricate in a boardroom. No amount of money generates that authenticity. It simply exists. Then comes factor number 3, the chaos element. That is the ace up the sleeve, the magnetic pull that refuses to let you look away. When she steps onto the floor, the script gets thrown in the trash because anything could happen. She launches shots from distances that would give most old-school coaches a heart attack. She threads needles with passes that shouldn't exist, pulling off stunts that redefine the geometry of the game. It turns out, that same electric volatility follows her right up to the commentator's headset. Last Sunday wasn't about reciting pre-written blurbs or staring blankly at a prompt screen. She refused to be a bobblehead, blindly nodding along with whatever the lead anchor suggested. She came armed with razor-edge takes and deep analysis, the specific type of commentary that made the audience freeze and wonder. Did she actually have the guts to say that on air? That is the secret sauce. It explains exactly why 4.5 million eyeballs were glued to the screen. But the wildest part of this saga? The league executives had absolutely nothing to do with building this beast. It wasn't the network suits, and it certainly wasn't some slick PR agency spinning a narrative. This was a fan-led revolution. The public handpicked her and hoisted her onto the pedestal. The crowd roared for more, and now every power player in sports is frantically trying to ride the wave. This leads us directly to the bombshell dropped by the network brass. It is the move setting the hoops community on fire. March 29th, Knicks taking on the Thunder. The queen of the court is stepping back behind the microphone. However, the pressure cooker has been cranked up to maximum this time around. Selecting this specific showdown wasn't drawing names out of a hat. There is a method to the madness. Forget standard scheduling logistics. This was a surgical, calculated move that teeters on the edge of controversy. Once you peel back the layers, the network's true endgame becomes crystal clear. March 29th. Burn that date into your mental planner. Put a giant red circle around it and set 17 alarms because the production planned for that evening, it transcends a simple ball game. It is a declaration of war on the ratings charts. Allow me to break down exactly why this head-to-head is so critical. New York against Oklahoma City. At first glance, it might appear to be just another Tuesday in the league. Sure, you have two solid squads and the promise of a decent scrap, but dig a little deeper. The Thunder aren't just good. They are the most electric young gun squad on the planet. Leading the charge is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a man with a genuine claim to the MVP throne. Their bench is stacked with prodigies who represent the very future of professional basketball. Then you have the Knicks playing in the Mecca, Madison Square Garden, the undisputed cathedral of the sport. That combination alone is usually enough to shatter viewership records. Yet, the network isn't betting the house on the athletes on the floor. They are doubling down on Clark, recreating her magic. Except this time, they want it louder, sharper, and absolutely unavoidable. Here is the inside scoop they are keeping off the press release. Whispers from the hallway suggest they are treating this like a Game 7, throwing a massive war chest of marketing cash at it. NBC is plastering this promotion across every single channel in their arsenal. They are positioning Caitlin Clark as the headline act, treating the actual game like a mere opening band. That bold strategy is creating serious turbulence in the executive suites, with one faction absolutely ecstatic. They are staring directly at the holy grail of broadcasting. They grasp the magnitude of the Clark brand, but the old guard? They are sweating bullets, because there is a massive gamble being ignored here. Is this just lightning in a bottle? What if those 4.5 million viewers were just curious tourists with zero intention of returning? Does the Caitlin Clark phenomenon come with a built-in expiration date? These are the nightmares keeping execs awake, yet the network is betting a fortune that the ride is just getting started. But let me tell you why my money is on them winning this bet. Recall what I mentioned earlier about the fan base, about how the people essentially anointed her? Well, the aftermath of Sunday's show gave us undeniable proof that this bond is ironclad. The internet didn't just buzz, it went into a full-blown meltdown. I'm talking total global saturation. Snippets of her commentary were flooding every feed imaginable. Fans were dissecting her basketball IQ and raving about the effortless vibe she shared with Carmelo Anthony. They weren't just complimenting her, they were ranking her alongside veterans who have held the mic for decades. There was one specific highlight that went absolutely stratospheric. It captured the moment she dismantled a Lakers sequence live on air. She spotted a nuance that every other expert completely overlooked. She broke it down with such clarity and swagger, you completely forgot you were listening to a 23-year-old rookie. That single video racked up millions of plays and sparked a chaotic comment section. And do you want to know the phrase that kept appearing over and over? If she is on the mic, I am locking in for NBA action every single night. Let that sink in for a second. We are talking about non-fans, people who checked out ages ago, and folks who haven't given a damn about the league in years, suddenly pledging allegiance. That isn't just marketing fluff. That is not some empty promo stunt. That is a seismic shift in the very fabric of sports consumption. It is unfolding in real time, right before our faces. Yet, not everybody is throwing a parade for this revolution. Truth is, some heavy hitters are working overtime to pump the brakes on this train. And the whispers circulating about Caitlin Clark behind the velvet ropes? It would make your jaw drop. We need to address the resistance because it is tangible. It is nasty. And it is bubbling up even as she continues to dominate the ratings. You see, when you hit this stratosphere of fame, you don't just get rivals, you spawn enemies. Genuine adversaries, individuals who are actively rooting for your downfall. Established figures who see your ascent as a direct threat to their survival. Folks who ground out a lifetime of work only to watch a fresh face swoop in and steal the spotlight in one evening. And within the cutthroat ecosystem of sports, media, those resentful voices, hold the keys to the kingdom. I am about to spill some tea that mainstream networks are too scared to handle because it is controversial, because it rattles the cages, and because it reveals the dark underbelly of this business. But you have a right to the unvarnished truth. Following that Sunday telecast, the public adoration was deafening. The metrics were undeniable. Everyone had to bow to the stats, but in the shadows inside private chats and exclusive industry, circles where media elites feel safe to be toxic, the daggers were drawn. They are screaming that she hasn't earned her stripes. Critics are calling it a desperate play for ratings, claiming she was hired strictly as eye candy. True professionals grind in the trenches for decades before sniffing an opportunity like this. They say it is a slap in the face to every veteran who climbed the ladder the hard way. I wish I were spinning a tall tale, but these are actual whispers circulating among sports media elites. But here's the part that truly makes my blood boil. The cowards would never utter a syllable of this in the light of day. When the red light is on, they beam. They offer praise for the fresh perspective, but the moment the mics are cut, the jealousy seeps out. Let me cut through the noise and set the record straight. That criticism is absolute trash. 100% hogwash. Caitlin Clark, unqualified? She has lived and breathed elite basketball since she could walk. She has faced the firing squad of the press thousands of times. Her basketball IQ runs circles around the suits and former players sitting in those studio chairs. To suggest she is a prop based on looks, that isn't just incorrect, it is a cheap shot. 4.5 million viewers did not tune in to judge a beauty pageant. They showed up to witness the most electric athlete of this generation. You want to talk about paying dues? She owned the collegiate game. She shattered glass ceilings that were supposed to be bulletproof. She dragged Iowa to the national championship stage. If that isn't earning your stripes, nothing is. The reality is, these pundits aren't losing sleep over her resume. They are panic-stricken because Caitlin Clark exposes a glitch in their matrix. For 50 years, the road to the broadcast booth was etched in stone. You start in the sticks, you work the small markets, you freeze on the sidelines for years. You wait for a legend to retire or get the axe. And then, if the stars align, you might get a seat at the big table. Caitlin Clark just took a sledgehammer to that entire process. And the gatekeepers are shaking because if she can bypass the hazing, their whole system is a sham. But the critics are blind to the obvious. Caitlin didn't cut the line because of connections. No one handed her a golden ticket. She paved her own highway. She built a brand so massive that the old laws of physics stopped working. And that fact scares the living daylights out of people who rely on the rulebook to stay relevant. But here is the kicker. The audience does not give a damn about office politics. They don't care about your tenure. They don't care about the corporate ladder. They want a show. They crave authenticity. They want to watch a human being who makes the hair on their arms stand up. And right now, nobody brings the voltage like Caitlin Clark. But wait, it gets even wilder. The shockwaves from that Sunday broadcast are already crashing through walls far beyond NBC and the basketball world. What the rival networks are cooking up behind the scenes will make your head spin. The frenzy began before Monday's dawn broke, before the Fader dollars to Fida Setta's official numbers hit the wire, before NBC could even pop the champagne. Competitors were already mobilizing. ESPN, Fox, Amazon, TNT, everyone is in a full-blown sprint. They are all screaming the same question. How do we get Caitlin Clark on our team? You see, this is the fallout when a phenomenon breaks the mold. When a disruptor proves the old playbook is useless, panic sets in. Everyone pivots. Everyone scrambles to grab a piece of the history she is making. Caitlin Clark is officially the hottest ticket in the entire sports media landscape right now. Let me paint the picture so you understand just how bonkers this situation actually is. We are talking about broadcast rights that cost tens of billions of dollars. The networks are practically lighting money on fire just to air the games. They burn millions more on the glossy sets, the production crews, and the marketing hype. Yet, even with all that cash flying around, viewership has been tanking for years. The NBA threw the kitchen sink at the problem, shifting schedules and tweaking formats. They flooded the internet with content and plastered superstars on every billboard. None of it moved the needle. Absolute zero. Then, out of nowhere, a star from a totally different league pulls up a chair for one night. Picture yourself as a high-level suit at a rival network watching the ship sink. You watch your demographic turn gray while every trick in the consultant's book fails. Then you look at the absolute explosion that just went down over at NBC. 4.5 million eyes glued to the screen, records shattered, a cultural phenomenon. Your move? You panic, and you start firing the cash cannons immediately. Insiders are already whispering that the bidding war has officially begun. At least 2 media titans have already dialed Caitlin Clark's agents. We aren't talking about a quick cameo or a guest spot on a halftime show. They are sliding massive, multi-year contracts with 7-figure paychecks across the table. The kicker? The woman hasn't even hung up her sneakers yet. She is literally in the prime of her WNBA career at this very moment. She is grinding for the fever, hunting for rings, and rewriting the history books. Still, these networks are so thirsty they are handing mic deals to an active athlete. Is there even a precedent for something this wild? Never like this. Never with this much heat. Never this urgent. But this is where the plot thickens and gets truly fascinating. Clark is not just a goldmine because of her stats or her highlight reel. She is valuable because she is a symbol of a massive shift in the landscape. The old-school audience is shattering into a million tiny fragments. Gen Z consumes media in ways the dinosaurs in charge simply cannot comprehend. Amidst all that chaos, one person manages to bridge the gap and capture everyone. The purists respect her because her fundamental game is absolute iron. The youth vibrate with her because she keeps it raw, real, and unfiltered. Casuals can't look away from the show, while the diehards respect her basketball IQ. That kind of universal magnetism? You cannot build that in a marketing lab, and the executives are terrified because they know it. So, what is the forecast for the industry? A total paradigm shift is incoming. The establishment is about to get swept off the board completely. Fresh voices are taking over, rebuilding the whole game on one new rule. Realness beats a resume. Vibes beat credentials. Influence crushes seniority. Caitlin Clark didn't just spike the ratings last Sunday. She completely dismantled the machine. And the part that keeps the old guard awake at night? She is only in the first quarter. There is another layer to this drama that everyone seems to be ignoring. What is the ripple effect going to be for the WNBA itself? Is there a shadow lurking behind Caitlin's massive crossover appeal that could actually damage the sport she loves? It's not as black and white as you might hope, and we need to address the elephant in the room. Does Caitlin Clark winning over the NBA audience actually translate to a win for women's basketball? Hold your fire for a second and listen. On paper, the answer looks like a slam dunk. Obviously, you'd say yes. You get more eyeballs, heightened awareness, and undeniable evidence that female hoopers can hang on the world's biggest platforms. But if you peel back the layers and ignore the flashy headlines, the reality gets messy fast. Let's break it down. What went down on Sunday night was nothing short of legendary. Caitlin Clark pulled in 4.5 million viewers to an NBA broadcast. She showed the world she can command the room at the absolute highest level of sports media. But here's the kicker. Those eyes were glued to the NBA product, not the WNBA product. She was breaking down the men's game. And the chatter that exploded afterward? It focused almost exclusively on her value to the men's league, completely bypassing her impact on her own league. Are you starting to see the friction here? The biggest superstar women's basketball has ever seen is being toasted for her ability to spike ratings for men. And trust me, that sits very poorly with a lot of folks inside the women's game. I'm going to let you in on some raw opinions that aren't making it to the cable news cycle. These are whispers from the locker rooms and front offices of the WNBA, people torn over this phenomenon. One active player, speaking off the record, laid it out like this. We have been grinding for decades, begging for respect, fighting for airtime, and clawing for legitimacy. We just want people to take our craft seriously. And now, our generational talent is being leveraged to boost a league that already has infinite resources? Tell me, how is that moving the needle for us? Another insider, a veteran executive in the women's game, put a sharper point on it. The subtext is loud and clear. The industry is saying Caitlin Clark matters because she can save the NBA viewership. That is the narrative. That is what the networks value. It makes you question if women's ball will ever be respected just for being itself. Now, don't get it twisted, this isn't jealousy. These aren't haters. These are lifers who have poured their souls into building this sport, who have fought uphill battles against obscurity, and who have watched men's sports suck all the oxygen out of the room for generations. They are asking a fair question. Is this a breakthrough, or are we just playing second fiddle again? Let me be crystal clear here. Caitlin Clark isn't the villain. She took a massive shot, and she didn't just land it, she swished it. She is growing her empire and making moves that are brilliant for her personal trajectory. And yes, in the long run, her rising tide should theoretically lift the WNBA's boat too. But the anxiety is valid. The nuance matters. The mixed feelings ripping through the women's basketball community are justified. To act like everyone is high-fiving would be a lie. Here is my read on the situation. Caitlin is such a unicorn, such a force of nature, that she is forcing us to grapple with questions we haven't solved yet. What does true sporting equality actually look like? Can a single athlete reshape the economics of an entire industry? Does crossing over elevate the collective? Or does it just create a superstar while the league stays behind? It's complicated. But there is one thing I know for a fact. Caitlin Clark didn't just spark a trend, she forced a reckoning, dragging long-buried conversations into the harsh light of day. The ball is now firmly in the industry's court to see if they fumble the pass. Is NBC going to pour the same fire and fury into women's broadcasts as they do for Clark's cameos on the men's stage? Can the WNBA ride this tidal wave to secure the blockbuster contracts and primetime slots they've been starved of? Are we finally going to flip the script? Moving past Clark boosts the NBA to simply acknowledging that women's sports command the spotlight on their own merit? These aren't just hypothetical musings. The verdict is being written as we speak, sealed away in executive suites far removed from the public eye. Yet, there's a wild card in the deck that completely reshuffles the game. A specific quote from Clark recently that lays bare her true mindset, her strategic roadmap, and why the doom and gloom crowd might want to rethink their bets. Let's be real, most pro athletes are absolute snooze fests on the mic. You know the drill. Canned responses, PR-approved fluff, zero insight into their actual souls or convictions. But Clark, she breaks that mold entirely. During a chat that most people missed, she dropped a line that made me freeze cold. A statement that unlocks the entire mystery of Consineris, her character and the massive endgame she is chasing. The press grilled her on the NBC gig, the hype train, and her personal career trajectory. Instead of serving up a safe, modest nothing burger, she pivoted to something profound. She shifted the focus to the weight of duty, honoring the trailblazers who paved the road, those who scrapped for leftovers, bawling in silent gyms for pennies, legends largely erased from history books. Then she dropped the hammer. I didn't build this wave alone. I'm balancing on the shoulders of decades of grit. So if I've got the mic, I'm speaking up, not for my glory, but for the next generation in line. Rewind that tape. Let the gravity hit you. Here's a 23-year-old crushing a 22-year-old record, with media giants at war for her signature, who could easily cruise on autopilot and cash checks forever. Her gut reaction is to preach about duty and service. That is weird. It's an anomaly. It is downright phenomenal. It explains precisely why she moves the needle. Because here is the raw reality of power. You can purchase eyeballs. You can fabricate a buzz. You can engineer trending topics with stunts and PR tricks. But you can't counterfeit a soul. The audience has a radar for it. They smell it. They distinguish instantly between a clout chaser and a crusader on a mission. Clark possesses that rare, unrefined truth, a calling that eclipses her own stat sheet. That kind of gravity pulls people in harder than any billion-dollar ad campaign ever could. Now, this is where her strategy gets fascinating. She isn't just preaching about history. She is laying the bricks for it in real time. Look at the chessboard right now. She is tearing up the WNBA. She is seizing massive broadcast slots with the NBA. And she is weaponizing every single second of airtime to elevate the women's game. She isn't whining for respect. She is taking it by force through sheer dominance. It is a textbook lesson in leverage. Every time the camera is on, she drops the WNBA name. Every mic in her face gets a lecture on her squad and her rivals. Without fail, she manages to steer every single dialogue right back to the women's game. That is not a coincidence. That is a calculated strategy. She grasps a fundamental truth that eludes most superstars walking in her shoes. Personal glory is hollow, unless it elevates the entire pack. And she is hell-bent on ensuring her momentum creates a wave that carries everyone else with it. But hold on, because the truly wild part is coming up right now. She is championing this cause while still lacing up her sneakers every night. Let's frame that properly. Typically, pros wait until they hang up the jersey to start preaching change. They hold off on building a media empire until the final buzzer sounds on their career. They stay silent until the risk is gone. Caitlin Clark is flipping that script entirely. She is dominating the court, revolutionizing the business, launching a different Stakshar, TV legacy, fighting for fairness, and managing insane public pressure without losing her soul. At just 23 years old, the psychological fortitude needed to juggle all that is practically alien. The average person would fold under a tenth of that weight or sell out their principles instantly. Most would coast on the path of least resistance. She is sprinting up the steepest hill she can find. Even worse, she makes it look like a breeze. But do not buy into the illusion. Off camera, there is a heavy toll, a crushing weight that comes from putting an entire league on your back. And the storm brewing directly in front of her is fiercer than any challenge she has met so far. The stakes are about to skyrocket. Let me break down the gauntlet waiting for Caitlin Clark. Because the next 12 months are going to be nothing short of a meat grinder. It is not about failure. It is because she is winning on a scale that defies logic. And triumph that loud paints a target on your back visible from space. Look at the immediate battlefield she is walking onto. The season is looming. Every minute she spends on the floor will be dissected, judged, and argued over. A single bricked shot will turn into breaking news. One defeat, and the pundits will start asking if she was just hype all along. The microscope will be unforgiving, but that is just the athletics. The media game is a whole different beast. The network confirmed she is back in the booth for the March 29th showdown. Knicks against Thunder. The stage is gigantic. The bar is set impossibly high. If the viewership equals the numbers from Sunday, she is officially gold. Her stock goes through the roof, deals pour in. But a tiny dip, the vultures will descend. Look, it was a one-time thing. The magic is gone. She isn't the unicorn we thought she was. The crowds cheering her name today will lead the demolition crew tomorrow. That is the nature of the beast. That is the tax you pay for superstardom. But wait, it gets deeper. Rival channels are lurking, throwing contracts around, forcing her to map out her destiny before she has even caught her breath. Does she lock in for years? Who does she partner with? What is the time cost? How does she juggle the mic and the ball? We are talking million-dollar crossroads that define a legacy. And she has to navigate this maze while remaining a top-tier physical competitor. That kind of burden would crush the average soul. But the part that keeps me up at night? The human toll. It is the silent conversation. All we notice are the buzzer beaters and the accolades. The world watches as records shatter and stadiums quake with the roar of the crowd. But the lens captures nothing of the silence that follows when the red light dies. The bone-deep fatigue, the solitude, the crushing demand for flawlessness, where vulnerability is strictly forbidden. Caitlin Clark has lived her life under a microscope since the moment she stepped onto a college court. Years of being worshipped, vilified, dissected, and argued over have forced her to forge an armor just to keep breathing. Yet, this current storm is a different beast entirely. It is nationwide, relentless, and suffocating. There is no escape hatch. Anonymity is gone, meaning every step she takes draws eyes. A single slip-up instantly transforms into headline news. One off night invites millions of critiques, and that specific brand of weight fundamentally alters a human being. It shatters them, often enough that we recognize the pattern. Golden futures crushed beneath the sheer tonnage of hype. Prodigies flaming out simply because the playbook for surviving fame was never handed to them. I refuse to believe that will be Caitlin Clark's destiny. Her entire track record screams that she possesses the psychological steel required to endure. That Midwestern bedrock, her circle of trust, and the humble perspective forged in Iowa far from the toxic glare of fame. Still, it would be dishonest to claim I carry no fear, simply because this specific caliber of stress has no equal. Not a single soul has ever trodden this specific ground. The map is blank, the instructions missing, and safety is a gamble. She is literally inking the manual in real time. While the athletic universe holds its breath, there is one specific trait about Caitlin Clark that fuels my optimism. She does not flee from the heat. She has never once retreated from a war. External ceilings have never determined her altitude. Whenever the chorus chanted impossible, she simply executed the task. Whenever they claimed she had peaked, she smashed right through the roof. Each dismissal only resulted in the critics looking absurd. And consistency like that is never a fluke. It stems from a fire burning deep within her core, an immutable force that the weight of the world simply cannot fracture. This is precisely the reason I am convinced her next move will leave the world stunned. While the detractors sharpen their knives and the cynics pray for a stumble, Caitlin Clark is quietly engineering a blindside. Allow me to spoil the ending for you, or at least the conclusion of this specific act. Her saga is barely in its second inning. We are watching the genesis of a shift that will echo through athletics for decades. However, right here, in this precise instant, my vision is clear. The broadcast on March 29th will be a titan. It will eclipse Sunday's figures, outperform NBC's public forecasts, and shatter the limits of what skeptics deem realistic. What fuels my absolute certainty? A variable that every single analyst has failed to plug into their algorithms. The momentum of anticipation. Sunday's show blindsided the public. Countless eyes were unaware she was even on screen until they stumbled upon it. The 4.5 million viewers? That was raw, spontaneous, practically a happy accident. Conversely, March 29th is a marked date. The hype machine is already churning. The digital landscape is already vibrating with noise. Viewers who slept on the debut are circling the date in red ink. But the crucial factor is this. That army of 4.5 million is acting as town criers to their circles. They are blasting highlights and generating a tidal wave of suspense that will crest exactly when the broadcast begins. When the sun rises on March 29th, the crowd won't just be intrigued. They are going to be absolutely ravenous for the action. And the moment those ratings drop, once NBC witnesses the miracle numbers they have been begging for, the entire landscape shifts. The dam breaks wide open. In a heartbeat, female athletes start landing prime broadcast slots. It won't be out of charity or bowing to social guilt. It happens because the suits finally see cold, hard evidence that the people want this. Just like that, the WNBA commands the spotlight, dominates the headlines, and earns the reverence it deserves because the networks finally understand that backing women's hoops isn't a gamble, it is a goldmine. Instantly, the narrative flips from asking if women can pull in a crowd to demanding, how fast can we get more of them on air? This is the uprising Caitlin Clark is igniting. This is the monument she is constructing. It is the destiny she is forging, smashing records with every single game that hits the screen. Let's pull back the lens for a moment, though, because the implications here are massive. This goes way beyond the hardwood. It signals a seismic change in our cultural fabric. We are witnessing a definitive turning point in history. For generations, female athletics were dismissed as a footnote, a mere side show that networks aired with a heavy sigh, burying them in the graveyard slots with zero hype. The prevailing logic was straightforward. Nobody wants to watch women play, but that logic was dead wrong. Viewers didn't turn their backs on these athletes. They were never invited to the party in the first place. The platform didn't exist, the marketing was invisible, and the money was nowhere to be found. Then, out of nowhere, a force of nature arrives to shatter every single one of those glass ceilings. Someone who confirms that the crowd was ready and waiting all along. She shows that the only missing ingredient was the chance to shine. Caitlin Clark is that living evidence. She is the smoking gun that obliterates the tired old justifications. A walking, talking billboard proving the industry got it completely backwards. And once that reality hits you, there is no going back to the way things were. The suits who bet against women's sports are forced to eat their words. Naysayers who brushed off female talent must now face their own prejudices head-on. The gatekeepers who denied access will have to justify their choices. The tide is turning. Genuine, lasting, structural evolution, and not because of a mandate. It isn't about picket lines or hashtags. It is because one singular woman made the truth impossible to ignore. So I have to ask you this. Where were you standing when Caitlin Clark flipped the script? Did you catch the magic unfold last Sunday night? Will you be glued to the screen on March 29th when lightning strikes twice? Are you ready to join the wave that redefines the athletic world for good? Because this exact second counts. Your eyes on the screen count. Your interaction counts. Your voice carries weight. Every single time you watch, you are casting a vote. Each time you repost a highlight, you are fueling the fire. Whenever you call for more airtime for these women, you are literally part of the uprising. Caitlin Clark struck the match, but keeping the inferno raging, that is on us. Hit the comments immediately. Let me know your take on this phenomenon. Sound off on whether you will be tuning in on March 29th. Share what this shift means to you personally, because this very discussion is fueling the transformation. And if you are new here, destroy that subscribe button and ring the bell, because the saga of Caitlin Clark has only just begun. I promise you, this next part changes everything.